All right, today we're going to crack open what you might call the ultimate readiness playbook, and it comes straight from one of the most pivotal chapters in the entire Bible, Matthew 25. And this isn't some far-off, abstract thing. It's all about how we live right now when we know something big is on the horizon, but we just can't circle the date on our calendar.
So let me just ask you this, right out of the gate. If you knew, for a fact, that a life-altering event was coming, but you had absolutely no idea when, how would you actually live today? I mean, really think about it. That's the core question Jesus gets into in this chapter. It's all about mastering the art of waiting well.
Okay, first things first, we got to get the context here, because the stakes are incredibly high. This isn't just Jesus, telling a few nice stories. This is his final, absolutely critical briefing to his closest followers.
Just look at where this all lands on the timeline. We're in the final week of Jesus' life on earth. He's just made his big entrance into Jerusalem, he's been teaching in the temple, and now, literally just a few days before he's crucified, he pulls his disciples aside for this crucial lesson on how to be ready for his return. The urgency is off the charts. And that brings us to the very first play in this readiness playbook, and it all starts by looking inward. It's about our internal state. Are we truly prepared on the inside? Jesus uses this amazing story, the parable of the 10 virgins, to illustrate this test. So picture this. You've got 10 bridesmaids waiting for the bridegroom to show up for a wedding feast. And here's the thing, on the surface, they all look exactly the same. Every single one of them is holding a lamp. They all look like they're ready to go. But this is where you see the huge difference. The 5 wise ones, well, they planned for a delay. They knew that wedding processions back then could get held up for any reason, so they smartly brought extra flasks of oil. But the other 5? Nope. They were only planning for everything to go perfectly. They were living in the moment, totally unprepared for a long wait.
So, what happens? Of course, the bridegroom shows up late, deep in the night, and the foolish virgins' lamps are sputtering out. They scramble, try to borrow oil from the wise ones, but you can't. And that's the whole point, right? This personal spiritual readiness, it's not transferable. You can't just borrow it from someone else at the very last second. It's something you have to build for yourself.
So this is a great place for us to just hit pause for a second and think. What's the oil in your life? What are those things? Maybe it's your faith, your character, wisdom, your relationships. What do you need to be cultivating right now so that you're truly ready no matter how long the wait is?
Okay, so Jesus has talked about our inner readiness. Now, he immediately pivots to what that looks like on the outside, in our actions. This is the second play in the playbook, the test of active stewardship. And he tells another powerful story to explain it, the parable of the talents. Here's the setup. A master's about to go on a long trip. He calls 3 of his servants and entrusts them with his property. Now get this, a talent wasn't just a skill, it was a massive amount of money. We're talking something like 20 years worth of wages for a regular worker. So yeah, this is a huge deal, a massive display of trust.
So to the first servant, he hands over 5 talents. Can you even imagine that? That's like 100 years of income dropped in your lap to manage. The second servant gets 2 talents, still an insane amount of responsibility, 40 years' wages.
And the third gets 1 talent. And we have to remember, even 1 talent was a life-changing fortune. The master wasn't shortchanging anyone here. He trusted all of them with a significant amount.
And wow, the way they responded could not be more different. The first 2 guys, they get right to work and actually doubled their master's money. They were active, they multiplied the investment. But that third guy, he was completely paralyzed by fear. He saw his master as this harsh, demanding guy, so he did absolutely nothing. Dug a hole, buried the cash, and then, believe it or not, he actually has the nerve to insult his master when he gets back.
So when the master comes back, this is what he says to those first 2 servants. And notice what he praises. It's not the final dollar amount. It's their faithfulness with what they were given. He rewards their active, productive, faithful stewardship.
And that, of course, leads to a big question for us. What are the talents in your life? The gifts, the resources, the opportunities that have been entrusted to you? Are you actively working to multiply them out of a sense of faithfulness? Or, and let's be honest here, is fear holding you back? Fear of failure? Maybe fear of not being good enough? Is it making you bury your talents in the ground?
All right, this brings us to the climax of the whole chapter. And you can feel the shift. Jesus isn't telling a parable anymore. This is a direct prophecy about the final judgment. This is him describing what the ultimate,
tangible proof of a ready life actually looks like.
So Jesus paints this picture of himself as a king, returning in all his glory, and he gathers everyone, all the nations before him, and he begins to separate them into two groups, as simply as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. This is it, the final accounting.
So, what's the test? What's the standard he uses to separate people? It's got nothing to do with how smart your theological arguments are or how pious you looked in public. It boils down to these 6 super simple, practical, compassionate things. Did you feed people who were hungry? Did you care for the sick? Did you welcome the lonely? And then, the king drops what might be the most stunning line in the entire chapter. He tells them, look, anytime you did this for one of the least of these, the overlooked, the vulnerable, the forgotten, you were actually doing it for me.
But you know what's wild? The righteous ones, the sheep, they're completely surprised. They're like, wait, when did we do all this for you? Their kindness wasn't some strategy to get a reward. It was just the natural overflow of who they were. It came from a heart that was already prepared, already faithful.
Okay, so let's pull this all together. What is the actual playbook that Matthew 25 hands us for living a genuinely ready life?
It really boils down to 3 big interconnected plays. First, you've got that inner preparedness. You have to cultivate your own oil, right? So you're ready for anything. Second, that leads to active stewardship. You got to faithfully use and multiply the gifts and resources you've been given. And finally, compassionate action. This is the proof. You let all that readiness and stewardship just overflow into simple, practical love for other people.
So in the end, this chapter doesn't just give us information. It leaves us with a really powerful challenge. The story of your life, my life, it's being written every single day in the little choices we make. So the real question is, what kind of story will it be? Will it be one of readiness and stewardship? Or will it be a story of last-minute regret?